Now, before I get to God of War, because I might go for a while on that one. You know what? You might go for a while on Pokemon. I don't know. I haven't spoken to you yet about Pokemon, which has been out for just a little over a week now. And I have seen all the discourse about this game, and I have seen all the video clips of this game. Not since Cyberpunk 2077 has a video game come out and really shown its ass in terms of a lack of polish is putting it nicely.
It's not, by the way, in the same fucking league as bad as Cyberpunk was when that came out.
I've seen some interesting stuff. But, I will start with that. We'll get that bit out of the way first. Like, for you, Jack, how's your experience with this game been from a technical and janky level?
I don't know if I just want to immediately fly into that, but look, right, I'll separate the positives and the negatives.
Well, I want to get like the really kind of bad stuff, at least that I've seen, out of the way, because then I can start talking to you and asking you questions about what I would hope is the positive stuff.
So visually, it is what it is, right? You've seen it.
I did watch the Digital Foundry video, and I was just taken aback by how much better Arceus looks than this.
It did look better, yes. So the positives are quite small, so I'll start with the positives. Things I like the look of: the Pokemon look very good. Very good. The textures on the Pokemon look nice. They feel more real. The colouring and stuff, they just look, absolutely adorable in the environment, and they've got the models to a great degree. Like, it brings life to some of the old Mons, and then the new Mons, like, the Fido feels like he's actually made of bread, and like, the other Pokemon feel like they have fur and claws and tusks and stuff, and it looks... The models look good. The Pokemon look the best in this game that they have ever looked, and I would say better. The actual Pokemon look better than Arceus. I think the character models look quite cool as well. It's very of a style anime kind of looking thing, but there's a little bit of an upgrade, I think, from Arceus in that sense as well. Your two main rivals have slightly interesting haircuts. One's got like a sort of emo emo and it like looks a little bit sort of like mid 2000s combined with like late 80s in terms of haircut. And then there's a girl that's like your sort of pal / rival who's got like little green streaks in her hair and stuff, and she looks quite cool. I think that the character models are decent enough. Everything else, yeah. It's weird to talk about the towns, because from the outside and from like the shape and the modelling of some of the buildings within the towns, they look pretty cool. Like, they all have their own like different feel, from like the actual shape and density of the architecture, and the fact that they've gone hard really after modelling it on sort of Spain, Spanish, Iberian tropes of architecture and stuff, and it does look nice. However, in towns you see a lot of repeated textures, you see a lot of repeated storefronts. Lots of the stores you kind of go into and it's just a menu pops up. You don't really go in there unless it's like for a haircut, in which case you kind of go in and walk around, and I feel like that's a little bit disappointing. The Pokemon centers are like petrol stations now. Like, you don't actually go into a building to go to the Pokemon center. They're just sort of on the map.
What, is it like a fucking drive-through now?
Pretty much, yeah, like a drive-through / petrol station.
Because I know you've got your... I'm guessing it's one of the two... Is it one of the, like, the legendary Pokemons that you can, like, drive around as a bike now? Or is it just an actual bike that's shaped like Pokemon?
So the legendary Pokemon are it is in the game is your ride Pokemon, whether it's like the bike or to climb or to fly or to go on water. And the travel, again, much like Arceus, feels pretty smooth and seamless.
Wait, does that mean that you catch the legendary much earlier on then?
Yeah, not really. But yeah, I want to spoil it too much for you.
Okay, all right, fine.
But yeah, so you have this experience, which is pretty cool. The overworld is disappointing in the way it looks. You know, the grass and the mountains and the water and everything. It just looks bad. The draw distance is shocking. There's been more pop-in this game than I've seen since like we've left the PS2 era, which is pretty scary, really. You just run in and all of a sudden a bunch of Pokemon pop in, or a bunch of people pop in. You're like, the fuck? Why couldn't I see them like over there? When you can see stuff in the background, the frame rate is just horrifyingly bad. Like where you see things moving at like 2-3 frames per second in the distance.
Is the big thing from the Digital Foundry, because I know we spoke a bunch about when Arceus came out, about like occasionally you'd see a bird off in the background that was like at 15 frames per second, but they were showing a side-by-side of like a windmill that was at 30 frames, then 15, then 7, then 2, and it's like, oh my god, that looks horrendous.
I mean, that windmill is shocking, mate. Yeah, because it sort of dominates that bit of the landscape as well, because at the top of like a little platform, and the closer you get to it, the more smoothly it moves, and then again, the further away you get from it, the worse it looks. And there's no way of hiding how bad the frame rate is on this game for those sort of things. So yeah, I think that's pretty comprehensive analysis of how it looks. So yeah, probably no more comments to add on that, but yeah, it's
but the thing is, like, this is a proper fully open world Pokemon game, right?
It is.
Because like, people talk about the open worldness of Arceus, but that is split into a bunch of different sections there. So so this is like a much bigger open world game than Arceus.
Now I have thoughts on that.
okay, all right.
So my thoughts would be that yes, if you want to, you can immediately pretty much head to really hard areas of the game. You can, if you want. If you want to catch Pokemon in really hard areas of the game at a higher level, you can do that as well. However, caveats. Caveat number one, if you catch a higher level Pokemon, you can't use it because it still is locked behind the gym progression system, which is fine because in theory, then your friend who completed the game could just trade you all the Pokemon you need and you could just cheese the whole game, which I don't really have a problem with.
How do they relate that though to the actual gyms themselves? Like, how does that work in terms of the power creep?
So the gyms are dotted around, but they're not scaled. So there are easy gyms and there are hard gyms, and you can access them all right away. So you can go into a really 6th, 7th power level gym, from the start of the game if you run towards it. And because it's Pokemon, you'll go in there with a team of level 12 Pokemon against some level 40 Pokemon, and you'll just get your ass kicked.
It's fine. We played Elden Ring this year. We know how it feels.
No, but Elden Ring, right? You could be shocking at Elden Ring. This is the difference between Elden Ring and Pokemon. I never thought I'd have to say this sentence. And I actually think this is where Elden Ring, and again, I never thought I would say this, outstrips Pokemon, is that you could be low level in Elden Ring and you could just be really concentrated, really patient, really disciplined. And even at a low level in Elden Ring, wearing no armor with a shit weapon, you could take down a boss. You can. Because all you need to do is wait, learn the patterns, wait for your opportunity, get your hit or two in, and then just keep moving, right?
You're not as beholden to RNG in the way that you would be with Pokemon.
Well, it's not RNG in Pokemon. It's just if you've got a team of level 20 Pokemon and you're facing 3 or 4 level 50 Pokemon, they're going to beat the fuck out of you.
Yeah, sure, fair enough.
There's not, aside from inflicting loads of weird status stuff, which is just tiresome and boring, and you just wouldn't be bothered with it. You just be like, well, why don't I just come back and train? Whereas Elden Ring, that's sort of part of the fun of the challenge, I guess, for people that are sickos, which is basically everyone but me. Of moving around and finding a way to use the space and utilize the memorization of attacking patterns to defeat it, whereas you can't do that. So there's no scaling in the game. So to me, if it's going to be open world, part of me just thinks I'd love to have a Final Fantasy VIII-esque system where no matter where I went in the game, I had scalability And if you wanted to make it that somebody could just trade you all of these high level Pokemon and they'd listen to you, I still think at least Pokemon that you catch should be able to respond to your commands, or not like flummox around in battle and get like one hit every 2 or 3 hits or something. Would be cool, because at least you've felt like a little bit of a reward for facing the danger of an area. Like, say again, in Elden Ring, I can't believe I keep comparing Pokemon to Elden Ring, fucking hell. But in Elden Ring, like, if you really wanted to, you could go to Caelid, right? You could get there, be really low level, find where there's like a rare weapon or a rare item, or shitloads of is it runes? The currency in the game. Yeah, shitloads of runes, and go there, and you could dodge all of the stuff, run through, knowing that 1 or 2 hits would probably kill you, but you could still do it, and then you're rewarded for your exploration. Whereas in this, you would be rewarded by catching a Pokemon, like, just cheesing a Pokemon, luckily on a Great Ball or an Ultra Ball or something. And then it just wouldn't listen to you. So there's like no reward for you going further than you should in the game. And even though it's open world in brackets, it isn't really. You should still probably face the game in the correct order, because as well, like, if you did go and just grind straight away, just grind for levels, and manage to overturn the odds and have your Pokemon that shouldn't obey you at that level obey you, then you're going to still have to go back to the earlier, or the intended earlier areas of the game, and just beat everything in one hit. So there's like no joy in doing that whatsoever. So that open world thing that Pokemon's never had has kind of thrown up the problem of it not being scalable in a logical way that kind of makes your exploration side interested. Also, some areas that require climbing and, maybe surfing or whatever, like, you don't have those powers. Again, those powers are unlocked with your buddy ride Pokemon as you go through gyms and beat various parts of the game. So therefore, there are areas in the areas that you can get to that you can't access anyway, because again, they're locked behind.
But any of the gyms themselves locked behind needing any of the HMs?
I don't.
Because I imagine that's something.
I think the 8th one maybe, because of the climb.
Sure, but that's something consciously where you would probably you run into the issue, and I'm trying to remember what game also had this issue where. It was Link Between Worlds, where they did the thing where they, theoretically you could go to any of the 8 dungeons in whatever order you want, but because of that, you had to make it that none of the items that you would get, like, theoretically, you should be able to go into a dungeon, and be able to get to a dungeon without needing any of the items. Now, I think there's like 1 or 2 where there are items specific that you need, but for the most part, instead of having those kind of highs and lows in terms of the difficulty, it's kind of fairly neutered, because it had to be designed in a way that, like, hey, you're going into this dungeon, but you could be going into any of these dungeons first. It's not exactly like black and white like that, but for the most part, there's about 5 or 6 of those dungeons where that is kind of the theory. And that was kind of my concern, that Pokemon Open World would also run into a similar issue like that.
Yeah, for the reasons that I've discussed, I think even though it is open world, it feels disingenuous to say that it's a truly open world experience. It isn't Breath of the Wild. It isn't Elden Ring. Like, it isn't those games. You can't just go and do these things because of those major 2 setbacks, really. So your exploration element, it almost feels like it punishes you just a little bit for it. So I don't know, like, it's the first time they've ever done this, so I kind of maybe feel a bit, not like sorry for them, or like, because I think maybe they've been a bit naive, but it's a fact finder. It's a discovery. It's
the first time they've done this, but it's not the first kind of big 3D style game. Whatever you want to say about Arceus, whether it was like a litmus test or an experiment, for the most part, it mostly worked.
Arceus did work, yeah.
I have my issues with it, but I find that to be way more of a success on numerous levels than now. And obviously, I haven't spent any time with Scarlet Violet yet, so I can't, make too many bold claims. But
they're still fun though. They're still fun Pokemon RPGs. Like,
I mean, look, a Pokemon game is like a pizza. Like it's going to be hard to fuck one of those up.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a great analogy. So there still is all the things that you expect in there. One thing that makes me happy is like one of the sort of like power up things that you can do, or influencing breeding and stuff, all forms around sandwiches, and gaining abilities. Like you can feed sandwiches to various Pokemon in the game to unlock abilities. And as a guy that fucking loves sandwiches, Mark, that put a smile on my face, not gonna lie to you. And yeah, like some of the animations of the Pokemon and the little actions that they do if they're out there is freaking adorable. Like the whole, again, like the Pokemon models sort of they don't fully mask over the dog shit looking environment, but they do make up for it a little bit. Like there are some really nice visuals and things that you can see in the game that kind of make you feel a little bit better about it. And there's a few features I like there's the ability to send your buddy Pokemon out to just battle all of the Pokemon in an area. And if you go into an area where you're like slightly over leveled, you can just send your buddy Pokemon out and they'll just kind of decimate the entire area around you and just gain all of the experience for the Pokemon that you have in your team, which is pretty cool if you're trying to train Pokemon up and you can't be bothered to actively battle. So it has that sort of like Final Fantasy 12 setting up your Gambit style element of running around and beating something in the open world that I like. I like the game. I do like the game, but it is just not as good as it could be, and that makes me sad. And it's the same issues that people talked about in Arceus with times 10. It's the same problems that people have talked about with Pokemon RPGs for years, and it's the same things that people have talked about with visuals in Pokemon games and their ambition for how they want their environments to look. There's just not a lot of people in it as well. There's another thing is just NPC, it just doesn't feel dense. Like some of the town squares and stuff that do look actually quite nice, they just don't feel populated. And not that I'm expecting like fucking Shakespeare-esque dialogue, but no one that you talk to in this game feels like they have any benefit of anything to say unless you talk to them and they give you an item or a Pokemon or something.
I mean, we did say, it was some time ago, we did say like, I remember, I think Garrett had the revelation that like it's Pokemon NPC games where you first realised, I don't need to talk to everyone in this fucking game.
Yeah, and I'm an exploration guy. Yeah. So I don't bother.
And actually, it was Garrett as well. I saw. I think he was tweeting about this in that like. What you mentioned there in terms of the towns being so just vacant, but also the fact that most of the buildings you can't actually go into, which is one of you
go into a shop, Mark, and a menu will come up. You're not in the shop.
Fucking hell! Honestly, that's really the biggest thing that I saw and came away with from the Digital Foundry video in particular is like how many concessions have been made, how many cuts and how many corners have had to be cut to get this thing running. And it's like, the big sort of argument or the point of contention is like, who is at fault or what is at fault? Is it like the Switch hardware itself? And no doubt the Switch does have a part to play. I was burying Bayonetta 3 left, right and center a couple of weeks ago, and most of that I do aim at the fact is just it's on a platform that it can't deliver like the experience that sort of game might expect. And some of that is no doubtly is true here as well. But the problem with Violet and Scarlet is that we literally had a Pokemon game 10 months ago that by no means is Arceus a looker, but you look at like just the actual fucking performance of the thing, B, like, the rock formations and how the environment kind of lays out, it looks more organic, it looks more real, where you can see the formations in this where it's just like there's just a green material on top, and then you can clearly see like the texture that's been kind of duplicated on top of each other. Like it's it looks so janky at points, and it's
there's clipping as well at times, which I didn't like. Like if you're going down a hill or something, or a mountain, and you get back onto flat ground, depending on how the camera angle reacts, you sometimes sort of like see the underside of the environment, which is just ugly.
Like there is no studio like Game Freak where I imagine there's very few that have had such a consistent, not that, they don't spend any money on these games, but I have to imagine the production budget compared to like the money they recoup back. And certainly with fucking this one, which has sold 10 million copies in 3 days already.
Double God of War Ragnarok.
It's insane. And it's fucking insane. And we'll see what happens with this one, because this is I feel like the first big Pokemon game that, I have issues with, say, like a Black and White, where I just kind of found them a bit boring, but this is like the first Pokemon game where it's like, no, there's a real jankiness to this, and a real like, and again, hey, it's the first one that's doing the open world thing, so I'm not expecting it to be perfect, but I do wonder
we still should hold Game Freak to a higher standard than this stuff.
But this is the thing, like, I wonder when we come around to this next time, will there be that little bit of trepidation, or like will we kind of wait to see?
No.
Well, yeah.
Like, and I know that I won't think, that last one was real janky.
You'll see that Lechonk variant and you'll just be all over it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think this is the problem though, is that no matter what Game Freak do, they're going to bring out one of these main series games every single year. They brought out 2 Pokemon games this year. They easily could have pushed Arceus back, right, to this window, and then brought this game out next year and just made it look much better. And everyone's been comparing it to Xenoblade, which came out this year, which looks 50 times better than this game, and even comparing it to Breath of the Wild, which came out 5 years ago on the Billy basic versions of the Switch, and just how much better the environment,
which itself is based off of the Wii U version as well, by the way.
Yeah. So they could have taken a bit more time, but they also know what you just mentioned. They bring this out, it's going to sell fucking 10 million copies right away, and then don't you think it's going to double that before Christmas?
Probably.
Where this is going to be under the Christmas tree for a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Because it's a first-party Switch game, and there ain't a whole load of those that come out, really. So, I don't know.
It's pretty... I don't know if shameful is the right word, but it's sad. It's sad to see.
Cynical, probably the right word.
What have we got lined up? Like, are there any mainline Pokemon games announced for next year already?
No.
No. All right.
No. Well, it'll be 2 years, won't it? Because it's usually 2-year cycles. They'll probably remaster.
Didn't we have the Diamond and Pearl remake last year?
Yeah, but that's a remake. I'm talking about
I'm talking just about that. Like in terms of anything, like even remakes, because I feel like.
But they'll probably spin maybe a Black and White remake out to like an external studio, like they did. Because don't forget, it was Ilka that did the majority of the visuals for the Diamond and Pearl remakes. It wasn't Game Freak.
There's no way they'd have the time to be working on like 3 Pokemon games at the same time.
No. They don't. Just take an extra year and make a game that looks really amazing, please, would be the fan reaction, but also at the same time, everybody's going to moan, but they're still just going to buy the games, so that's why Game Freak aren't going to do that. Yeah, I guess what I'd be curious about now, because they do have, on top of the Pokemon Go revenue, but they do have like 3 cash cows here now between, well, I mean, they're going to run out of remakes they can do at some point unless they start going into, I mean, are we due a Pokemon Stadium like reboot of that at some point? I would be on board with that. You're part of the problem.
I am part of the problem, but yeah, I liked the Pokemon Snap remake. I have no issue with that.
So did I. I'm not Dave Ryan. I liked it.
Yeah. But you've got that, you've got the mainline series, obviously, and then, I mean, you'd expect they'll do an Arceus too, like the original was successful. So they got all of these different sources to work with here, but it is about how they actually kind of manage these resources now. And
imagine an ancient Kanto game. Oh, see, like, I'm a sucker because I really want that now. So yeah, or like an ancient Johto game would be fucking cool too.
I mean, I think like we're all just kind of banking on that sort of like big red or silver 3D experience at some point.
Yeah, and it's going to look like this, and I'm going to be real disappointed, but I'm still going to buy and play it, because I'm a fucking idiot.
Never mind. What's I've really not read anything, but I imagine that it's the same deal where it's not going to be the full Pokedex, because there's over 1,000 of the fuckers now.
No, it's not. I think there's about 400 or so in the game. I think there's about, read it's 100-ish new Pokemon. Some of them offer new forms for old Pokemon. A lot of them are just new. Tinkaton is the absolute boy or girl, depending on the variant that you have. So big thumbs up for Tinkaton. All of the main evolutions of the 3 main Pokemon are pretty good, apart from the Sprigatito one. Actually, I would say ain't that great. But like, just what Fuecoco evolves into is just like a big atomic fiery bastard crocodile mark, and it goes from like, literally, by the way, Fuecoco, just around on the map, just this big fucking dumb grin he has. The thing's just looking up at you at all times with those big wide eyes and the stupid grin on its face, just looking at you, just saying, love me. And you know what? I do love it.
I did read that they were suggesting that he should be, his final evolution should be banned from competitive play, because he's like, just between being fire ghost type, he's one of his moves is just ridiculously OP.
It's OP, but also the art of it is fucking cool as shit.
Okay.
But yeah, the cat, the second evolution of Sprigatito is pretty cool. But the final evolution just creeps me out, like really creeps me out. I don't like the trend of them making the main Pokemon go really humanoid. I don't like that, which is why I love the horrible fire alligator crocodile bastard thing. I'm like, yes, that's what I want it to look like. I want my shit to look like a Charizard or a Venusaur, or even Blastoise is a little bit humanoid, I suppose, except he's not, because he's a giant tail with big fucking cannons.
He stands up. That's fine.
He just stands up. But the standing up became, let's make him anthropomorphic humanoids, which I don't like. But yeah, anyway, that's another gripe. Anyway, I need to stop talking about Pokemon, because I could talk about Pokemon all night.